This is The Trend, where you'll get enlightened perspective on trending news and topics with amazing commentary. I'm your host, RTL Faith. Welcome to the podcast, and as always, we breathe the message here that we are here to spread discussion, debate, solution, and overall compassion. Ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between, welcome to the podcast. This is The Trend with RTL Faith. I am your host. And today's episode was supposed to be an interview. I was supposed to have a guest on, but he was a no-show. So the show has to go on. And I've been thinking, constantly trying to make sure the podcast has the most cleanest quality in terms of the content and the most important discussions and conversations. Right, and obviously I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to burn myself out by any means and overwork myself. So initially it was 3 times a week, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. But I don't want to oversaturate the content either. So with that said, moving forward, it will be Tuesday and Friday. Episodes Tuesday and Friday. Now they may differ. One day I may have an RTL rant. Another day I might have an interview with a guest, a very interesting conversation. Who knows? But one thing for certain is that moving forward, 2 times a week, 7 a.m. EST, on the YouTube channel and on the Apple Podcast, Spotify, RSS, everything in terms of podcast platforms. So be in tune for that content. And I'm going to make sure I'm going to keep on upping the levels, keep on increasing the content, and making better and better discussions for you guys. I hear so many interesting discussions on the multiple platforms and the important conversations that are being had, and I want to make sure I'm part of those discussions, part of those conversations, not only to increase my own knowledge, but also to spread a different and important perspective to everybody who's listening at the end of the day. So today was supposed to be about motivation, self-motivation. I was going to have a guy who's very into self-motivation, bettering oneself, and all that 9 yards. And I'm going to still talk about motivation, of course. But I want to focus on something in particular. I want to focus on something that's very important. Self-motivation is essential. And it's viewed as toxic behavior for some odd reason. What is very notable is how people treat one another when it comes to these things. You know what is very ironic to me? Is we see someone like Kevin Samuels die, and people saying good riddance, good for him, bye-bye. We see people that are motivational get emotional, such as Jordan Peterson, who's mocked for being emotional for what men are dealing with in current society. We see people celebrated when their speech and when their influence is deteriorated, such as Andrew Tate. Now, sure, these people are mostly there to emphasize the growth and the importance of men, but also women as well, but in a different light. Something that is less left and liberal, but more traditional, more biological. Whether you agree with that sentiment or not, that's your prerogative. But what is interesting, what is confusing, is these same people will feel sad that Jeffrey Dahmer, a serial killer, died. Will make videos, will be so inclined to express their opinion, they'll make TikToks of them feeling emotional, feeling bad, feeling sad that Jeffrey Dahmer died. Saying things such as, Why did he have to die? Oh no! People feeling absolutely distraught when someone that's potentially famous but a potential scumbag kicks the dust as well. The worst of humanity kicks the dust. Well, because they romanticize a certain image in said person's head, it's okay. But people were actively trying to bring up people, motivate people. Good riddance. Get them out of here. I wish death upon you. It's crazy. It's a very weird dynamic. It's a very toxic dynamic. There's a very interesting topic. There's a very interesting discussion that is being had in terms of how you should be able to express yourself. But it seems hyperbolic when we have people, groups of people on a different side suffering, having suicidal thoughts, being depressed, and all that other stuff. And they're just being ignored. Preaching one thing, acting a completely different way. It's interesting. It's ridiculous. And that's why I have this podcast. That's why I created this podcast, is to have these important conversations about these essential topics. There's a lot of essential things that need to be discussed, from economics, from financial wealth, from general health, from the different controversial topics ranging from abortion to religion, from the identity politics that is going on, from the power structure between men and women, from the power structure of classism. A lot of these conversations need to be discussed. They need to be talked about. They need to be elaborated, and they need to have a perspective that is not forced on one side or the other. Super liberal guy, hey, everyone is racist. Toxic masculinity. We should all be able to identify as whatever we want on the rainbow. Conservatives, screw the government. They don't know what they're doing. All the media's against us. And you people are trying to destroy our way of life. Christianity, God. That's all we got to talk about. People, there's a happy medium, though. There's a moral, or there's a middle ground that I think their voice should be heard much more. Or, at the very least, these different ideals should be challenged in a very neutral manner. Because I'll be hearing discussions, I'll be hearing debates, I'll be hearing conversations about these different topics, and some points I would love, and then other points would be so much on the other side, both sides sound ridiculous. But what is important, and what I always appreciate, is that conversation is being had. Discussion is being met. Debate is being emphasized. And overall, at the end of the great battle of talking amongst one another, potentially, finding a solution at the end of the rainbow is what matters most. It is what is essential in these conversations. Because what is the point of making a idealistic notion about something you believe in? What is the point by combating someone's beliefs and their way of life? What is the point of having these conversations if we can't find a potential solution or common ground? You can disagree to agree, or you can agree to disagree. That's the right terminology. You could do all this talking and just not find anything you agree on. But one thing you can, at the bare minimum, do is find just one point of emphasis that can be beneficial to both sides. One. It's hard to find the proper way to find a solution for everything. That is definitive. I say time and time again, when it comes to morality, it's a spectrum. There's good, there's evil, but most of it is a moral gray. Nothing's ever black and white. And I say that to say the only things that I know for a fact, that I wholeheartedly believe, is the only thing that should never be accepted, preached, emphasized, and spread is hatred and violence. Spreading hatred is evil. Spreading violence is evil. Whether you're doing it to take down a tyranny or whether you're spreading hatred against a particular scumbag, these are evil actions. Some people say, hey, sometimes you just got to get your hands dirty. And you may be right based on a particular situation. But as long as we all agree what you're doing is evil, then it is what it is. We see the role models. We see the iconic symbols of humanity spread the absolute opposite message and having enormous results. The impact of Jesus Christ. Muhammad when it came to India. Or Gandhi. Gandhi when it came to India. MLK when it came to the civil rights movement. And you can find numerous of examples. None of us want to go into a period where bloodshed and hatred and violence is the core behind everything that is done. We reached a point where discussion and conversation can be the de facto way for us to find a particular solution. And when we don't have that, when we got places like Russia who are so ready to slaughter people to take over an entire country, we got places like China who's so ready to put people that don't agree with their way of life in a concentration camp. And I'm not even saying America is all peaches and roses. They have their flaws, and it is notable. But one thing I will say is, at the very least, in America, we can spread these ideas freely without any restriction. Is what I would say if we didn't have stuff like Andrew Tate getting banned for literally nothing. I also posted a clip from one of my podcasts, and it was regarding the Texas passing the anti-censorship law. Call it whatever you want. You know what the law is. And a lot of people kind of came under this blanket idea, mostly conservatives anyway, and they were saying it's good to have freedom of speech, everybody being allowed to say their speech on the internet, so we know who to avoid. And I was thinking, like, I wish it was that simple. I wish it was. Because I am in the camp thinking that a lot of parents are not doing their jobs nowadays. But being realistic, it's impossible to keep your kid away from technology and social media. And kids are very impressionable. So are dumb people. Very impressionable. So, putting a radicalized idea in front of them that spreads hatred and violence, I'm not okay with. We should never we shouldn't set a precedent where it allows hatred and violence on the internet. There shouldn't be a precedent like that, and I disagree with that notion. The difference between something like Andrew Tate is he wasn't spreading violence and he wasn't spreading hatred. So his situation was completely agenda based, and that's it. I get where these conservatives are coming from. I get what they're trying to say, but they are not taking into account the entire picture. And that's just the fact of the matter. So ultimately, this podcast episode was a rant from me. The next evolution for the content, the next evolution for myself as I continue to try to improve. I'm going to have more dynamic discussions. I'm going to have more knife-cutting debates. I'm going to have better and more tangible solutions on the conversations that are being had. As I said, I'll be starting to post on YouTube and on the platform every Tuesday and Friday moving forward. May have to change a few things on the website, maybe. But overall, let's call this Season 3. Overall, one thing that I want to note for everybody out here that is listening and watching is that it's not over. People, we don't have to give up. I have my flaws, you have your flaws, who is listening and watching. A lot of things seem very dreary. You see things on the media all the time about some of the most negative things going on. There seems to be a focus on the negativity that is going on in the world. But in addition to an ignorance about how truly horrifying things can be. We can turn things around. We can find common ground. Because something that I've seen Destiny say, which I think has so much value, is that at the end of the day, most people, some people are evil and psychopaths like Jeffrey Dahmer, but most people want to do good. Most people want to be a good person. Doesn't necessarily mean when things go dreary that they will be a good person, but most people want to be a good person. They want to be considered on the side of good and just. Whether that's following a particular religion, i.e. Christianity in America, whether that's believing that people should be allowed to have expression and being part of a LGBTQ or BLM movement, both sides that think they're doing something good. They're on the side of the morally just. So, there's a way to find common ground. There's a way to be compassionate with one another. What it really takes is for you, for everybody, to see the other person that disagrees with me, who may have a bad opinion, see them as a person. See them as someone who may be wrong on my perspective, but they just want the best for everybody, as just like me. Was it empathy? I think it's empathy. Well, put yourselves in the other person's shoes. And really think about it. Think about, if I was in that situation, how would I be? It's hard. None of us are perfect. Hard. Not a lot of us are kind. And I don't even know if every person you meet across is trying to be a good person. A lot of people aren't. A lot of scumbags out there. A lot of people that objectively fall under the line of evil. And those people should be ostracized. Those people should be put in prison. Or worse. But most people. Person you cross every time you walk down the street. The person you see on social media that's enjoying the same topics that you are. The person you're having a sports debate on whether Michael Jordan or LeBron James is the better NBA player of all time. The person you're debating, trying to figure out which is better, Naruto or Bleach. Regardless, on most situations, just another person. And me, I'm trying to have the conversations that matter. To try and talk about the things that will have actual impact on what's going on in society. There's a lot to talk about. And I think I found out how I want to approach things. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be back every Tuesday, every Friday, 7 a.m. The Trend with RTL Faith podcast. Stay tuned, because everything is just gonna go up. Thank you. Peace.